All right, welcome people to this episode of the Vision2Mission podcast. Today we have a very special guest. We have my friend, church elder, father, community servant, Mr. Tom Martin joining us just to have a conversation about life, about lessons, and about wisdom. And as you know from listening to this podcast, it's about really giving of our time, our talent, and our treasure, and even more. So, Tom, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Great, Brandon. Thanks so much for inviting me. I appreciate it very much.
No, absolutely. Again, and thank you for being a guest and a friend of the podcast. And in case you all didn't know, Tom is one of those individuals who sends me regular feedback on the podcast. And I really appreciate that because it helps me to see how our messages are coming across, what we can do better, what we're currently doing well. And I really value that feedback. So thank you, Tom. Definitely noted and appreciated.
Well, amen. I mean, I've learned so much from all your different guests. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the fact of what you're doing on the side of the entrepreneurship focus that you have, and the resources of all kinds that you are, bringing into visibility so that people know about them, whether it's on the business side, personal growth, education, mental health. I appreciate that very much, and I've appreciated all the guests and all the things they've shared.
No, yes, thanks. And one of the things I listen to a variety of different podcasts, and what I realize is that for myself, I do like to have variety for the most part, and so when I have variety and they're actual good conversations, right, that I'm listening to, it's giving some value. Those are the ones that I really listen to on a regular basis, on a weekly basis. And so we're just trying to create that here, right, and share with as many people, as possible. So let's just go ahead and dig in. So, we've had many, conversations just as friends and offline, but if you can share for our audience just a bit about your upbringing and what motivated you as a part of your upbringing to eventually become a part of the military, to join the military.
Okay, that's terrific. Thanks. My family background growing up, my family lives in the DC area here. Right now, Allene and I live here in Woodbridge, Virginia, but I grew up on the Maryland side. My parents still live in Rockville. They came there when I was in grade school. My dad was in one of the government agencies. The early years, he was in the Atomic Energy Commission and the Environmental Protection Agency, because his work field had to do with when the power companies were building the nuclear power plants, how they would be regulated for the safety factors and the environment and all those kinds of things. And so, that was his working career. And then a lot of my brothers and sisters still live around this area. We had a big family. I have 4 sisters and 2 brothers. So the family upbringing was lively. A family that size, I've shared with other people. We do get along really well, and I'm very grateful for it. I don't take it for granted at all that we have a good family dynamic. Now, when we were young, there was always someone having a fight with someone in that household, okay? With 7
Right.
kids at any given time, either 2 of the girls are fighting over something, it would blow over. Then one of the girls and one of the boys would be fighting about something, it would blow over. Or me and my brothers would be fighting about something and it would blow over. But overall, it's a very healthy dynamic. And now we're all, very much on perfectly good terms all around. If the parents need something, we have a team effort towards it as to, I can do this, who can do that, go to this appointment, travel here, look after something at the house. And I don't take that for granted, because I know that that's a very unusual thing. Okay. God willing, in the upcoming year for my parents, at that point, that will be their 64th wedding anniversary, God willing, in the upcoming months of this year, and likewise, Allene's parents, they were married more than 60 years, and I don't take that for granted at all. I know how rare that is. As far as the part about my thing from my youth and deciding I wanted to go into the military service, certainly when I was a kid, it all just looked so cool. The idealized view of how cool it is. They get to jump out of planes. They get to operate all this equipment. And again, the idealized view, you see things of people behaving in a way where they're respected and there's professionalism and things like that. I think there was, for me, I think another part of it resonated with me, probably unconsciously, the structure of it I admire what you do, Brandon and Anton, with your, you are entrepreneurs. You're doing the things where you have a vision, as your podcast says, and you get out there to do it. That's not in my makeup. I am not the idea guy. One thing that I think resonated with me about military life is there's no mystery about what they're going to have you to do, okay? There's no mystery about who's in charge. They're going to tell you what we're doing that day. They're going to tell you how we're doing it, how to operate the equipment and everything like that. Now you need to do it and put yourself into it, but the idea itself is already there. And I think that part resonated with me because I don't count myself as one of the visionary thinkers. Most of the stuff that I've done has honestly been the idea is already there. I'll put myself into it and try and make it great. But don't ask me to come up with the idea. That's not me. I could never be on the entrepreneur side of things. I'd be blank on how to go about it and how to get started in it. I really admire everyone. You've had a lot of different guests from different walks of life that have done their own thing. And I admire that a lot. It's not part of my makeup. Now, there's a blessing and a curse there. The part about, again, the relational side of things is more challenging for me. I mean, it's easy for me to do something if I understand the structure of it. And I can be naive in that way where I only see things at face value. It's challenging for me to read between the lines, to see the nuances. I can be literal. I can be very naive to where I take something at face value as what it is. So again, I mean, a lot of what I want to do in going into military life, then I had the view of it that I had, and I thought that is what I want to do. I want to do those exciting things. I want to see different parts of the world and go different places. The patriotic part, I want to serve this country, and take a stand for the rights and freedoms and liberties that we have and democracy and things like that, and to serve people. You see, again, the idealized things of people serving when there's disasters and when there are things where people are being rescued from things like that, of doing things that serve people in those kind of ways. So those kind of things prompted me to want to do that and be part of, go into the military life for myself.
No, that's amazing. And I appreciate you sharing that. And also just, again, the rationale, right? Kind of your makeup. And it definitely sounds like the military was perfect for you, right? Because of the structure. And it's funny that you say that because I think we're similar in some ways, meaning like there's a lot of stuff in my house that I put together, like a lot. And I'm really, really good at reading instructions, but I am just not a natural person in terms of just kind of intuitively knowing about things. But, I can look at a box. Like I just put a dresser together in our basement for our guest room. So for me, and again, I think we're similar. Like I look at the box, I look at what the dresser's supposed to look like, right? And then kind of follow the instructions along that path in order to reach that end. And it's like, oh, okay. And then it makes more perfect sense. And so, I think for the things that, the cliche is, kind of start with the end in mind. And I think from a business perspective, God does give me certain aspirations. I think we all have dreams, right? We all have things that we aspire for, but it's okay. Well, what are the steps that we need to take in order to get there, for sure. And this is, I don't know, maybe like a year and change ago, I actually did an individual podcast on how to be an effective follower, which, and I think about that because, as Christians, we look at, the 12 apostles who were following Jesus, who was following God, right? And to me, that's so important to be able to have the qualities of trust and humility, right? To be able to follow, to be able to have a structure, and to not always be the visionary, to not always be the person up front, because the people who are on stage could never be successful without the people backstage making those things happen. So there's always an appreciation for the people who serve in the parking lot at the church and make sure that everyone's good, the people who serve security, the people who are ushers, the people who actually are unsung, unfortunately. So thank you for sharing that, for sure. Looking here, what are, I'll put down 2 to 3. What are just a few of the life lessons that you carry with you to today that you've learned while you're during your tenure in the military?
Thanks. Going back to the part about my upbringing and how I know that it's very rare, one of the things that stood out to me straight away as soon as I walked into military life in the real world out there was that how much I needed to learn about people. Okay. The variety and the diversity of the people that are there and what drives them and makes them tick and what kind of challenges they have and what kind of circumstances they're from was just astonishing to me, the huge variety. And I told you about my family and my upbringing. Look, many people, they join the military to get away from their family. My wife, Allene, likewise had been in the Army, and she had that as a very clear lesson that there she was overseas in Germany telling the soldiers, hey, Mother's Day is coming up. Make sure you contact them. And the sergeant drew her aside and said, Lieutenant, some of these people are here to get away from their Army. That's why, away from their family. That's why they're in the Army, and that's why they're in Germany. So kind of go easy on call your mother for Mother's Day, because that's not what went on for them and how they got here. But I saw that I had walked in with a totally wrong idea, and I needed to learn and concentrate on what is really going on with people and what kind of situations they're in, where they see themselves, what makes them tick, and how I should be interacting with them and leading them and serving them, because they are very unlike me and what I thought of, again, the idealized view of coming into the Army. People come in with all kinds of different circumstances, good, bad, and in the middle. And I needed to learn a lot about people. That's for sure.
No, fantastic. So, go ahead, please.
Another example and a thing that I carry with me is when I did see great leaders. Okay, there were some leaders that I had the opportunity to serve with that it was just a privilege and truly a blessing and an honor to be with these guys, because I'm not just talking about people who are like the poster person of their military skill, but their devotion to the soldiers, to the people, that you want to see them get mad. You'd see them get mad if they learned that, a soldier was there was some kind of barrier to the soldier being able to get their educational benefits, or some kind of bureaucracy that is interfering with the soldier's family members being able to, get their appointments and their school considerations and stuff like that. That's when these guys would go on the rampage and, not let anybody mess with their people. And, they definitely led the unit and had very high standards for what they expected from the people, and yet they stood up for the right thing, and they would go the extra mile to look after the people under their charge. One of the leaders that we served with, he later on became he went to the highest level of military duty. He became the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is the highest military position. When I learned that they had picked his name, it practically brought tears in my eyes, because that guy was the finest officer I'd ever been around, ever. Now, meanwhile, again, sobering type lessons where there were, plenty of things are unfair. And in the military life, it's a large organization, and plenty of stuff happens that is wrong and it's unfair. And a life lesson for me was there are times when I realized after the fact, I was the leader and I was responsible and I was the one with authority, and I was the one making it unfair because of the way I would make certain decisions or not, the way that I would get engaged in things or not, I was the one making it unfair. And I had to realize that. And there's some things where I overlooked some things and dropped the ball in some areas that affected people, and those things do carry with me even to today, to be mindful of that, of if I have a responsibility, I need to really be mindful of that and look after what the effect will be on people's lives for the long term.
No, it's true. I have been reading a book by Dave Ramsey called Entree Leadership, and he, really goes into detail into his 25, 30 plus years in business. And one of the things he talks about is that responsibility that we naturally have when you do have people, I guess you can call them employees, subordinates, teammates, soldiers under you, whatever, really taking into consideration, how this affects what will this particular decision, what will it do to affect other people? Like, how will it affect their lives? And I really do respect that because, as a small business owner, when I make decisions, I have to think about a couple things concurrently. To be honest, I have to think about is this best for the business, right? And for the health of the business now and for the long term. But okay, how does this affect those who are working to make the business move forward? And how does this affect, those within our ecosystem, right? Our sphere of influence. And, there are things that we just have to do. And then sometimes, Tom, I think we make decisions that really turn out to be great, right? And we hit a home run. There are other times when we don't. But in my heart, I feel like if we do the right amount of research, if we're coming at it with the best intentions, right? Well, then really, what can you do, at the end of the day, if it does not end up being the very best? So, and I think especially with the military, my father was in the Army, as well. He was a Vietnam War veteran. But I've never been in the military, but kind of thinking about all of this, the life or death decisions, literally, that men and women have to make all the time. It definitely weighs on us, but we reap the benefits here in this country because of our freedom, and because of the things that we're able to do.
Right.
Go ahead.
And I mean, it's certainly not all bad. I mean, there were other times that I do find gratifying, of good memories where I know I did the right thing, being in a situation where some guys in my unit were at a place where there was a leader from a different unit that didn't like what they were doing, and he gave them a correction, and they did what he said. Yet that somehow was not enough. The guy was going to come back around and harangue and harass them and bother them and lecture them when they had done what he said. And I walked up to this situation and I said, "Is everything all right here?" And he said, "Well, are these your soldiers?" And I said, "No, but I know them." And he said, and he told me his point of view. And I said, "I saw what happened. They did what you asked, and it seemed to me the matter's settled." And I told the guys in the unit, I said, "Okay, look, go back to your unit. If anything comes up from this, you know how to reach me. I'll tell your leaders that you did what the guy told you to do, and that it's over and it should be over and nothing else should happen from it." And then there's ambiguous things, a guy who was born in he had been born like in the islands somewhere. And we get a lot of people that they come to the military duty and that might be their path to citizenship. They can join the Army if they were born in, Bermuda or someplace like that. And it's a path. And this guy had gotten his naturalization certificate, but he was petrified because on the certificate it said, "You're not allowed to copy this." Because of fraud. They want to prevent the fraud. And I said, okay, we have to find a middle ground here that allows you to have an extra copy of your own, naturalization certificate, and find a way to do that to help the guy overcome obstacles, and likewise to be there when there was one of my guys and he owed money on a car repair to a place up where his hometown was, but we were on a consistent duty where people couldn't leave and go back home at that time. We were on duty, and I called up that thing and I said, "Look, this guy does owe you the money and I'm going to make sure he does it, but right now he can't get there. So I'll appreciate you not trying to take him to court or something like that, or ask to have a warrant for his arrest or something. He cannot come there right now. We'll make sure he does, but right now he can't do that." And I am grateful for the times that I was able to use the authority the right way to look out for the needs of the people.
No, absolutely. And so how long were you part of the military in the Army?
I was in for 20 years. I was in for just a little bit over 20 years in the Army.
Fantastic. And so what year did you retire?
I retired in 2004.
2004. Wow. Okay. So it's been 19 years now, or 18 and change, depending upon, I guess, when you retired. And so as a part of your tenure in the Army, at what point did you end up encountering and having a relationship with God, which has led you to where you are today? Okay. Or did it happen post-military?
Sure. No, it was during that time. And, even from when I was young, my spiritual life was always important to me in a way, at least in some ways. I always went to church on Sunday, even when I left home and went to college, and even when I went off into the Army. And many of my experiences during all those years, many of them were good in a lot of ways, but I think you asked about, a relationship with God. They were not personal at the relational kind of level for me anyway.
Mhm.
In college, I had classes that were academic type colleges on biblical subjects. I had an Old Testament survey class. I had a class on Paul and early Christianity. I had a class, even in the English department, they had a class on the King James Bible as a work of literature. Look, I love those classes. I got a lot out of them. I got A's in those classes, which is good. My degree was in mathematics. I could have used more A's in mathematics, but I love those classes. Now, here's the thing in terms of my personal faith life, though. Those all came up to the stopping point right before saying what they didn't say is, okay, now go do these things. Now have these relationships where it says love one another, actually be able to say, who's the one another that you're talking about? Do these things in your life. You've seen what the academic side of things are, what God is sharing in the scriptures about his plans for all people. But now do this with your own walk with him and with the community of people who are trying to walk in faith, and then to the wider world. So at that stage, it was all academic for me. And of course, there were some bad experiences along the way. Had a couple of bad experiences with bad groups, and then a long time of being kind of emptiness in the personal realm of it. And then, of course, living in places in parts of the country where there seems to be a lot of what you call the Bible Belt and stuff like that. But then there'd be the bad press at the same time about the scandals everywhere and greed and abuse and prejudice that would be happening in those places. And my mindset that I settled into at that was, I thought nobody had the answer, because all around is just scandal here, scandal there, bad experiences here and abuse there and prejudice and all these things. And I thought, okay, I'll just have to try and do the best I can with what I know, because there isn't a solid answer, or there's not a trustworthy place to go in our culture that's really going to be authentic in those ways. The thing that happened for me as the turning point was I did encounter a part of a ministry life where there were two things that were happening. One was the solid teaching about biblical Christianity, and I did have enough foundation to know what was authentic about the teaching side of it, but then also people changing their lives, really. One of my guys that was in my Army unit, and I'm going to have to call him before the podcast comes out because he might see it, and I'll tell him, hey, I'm going to mention this. I won't mention his name right now. We would butt heads all the time. We had a good working relationship a lot of the time, but then we would argue and clash and clash. And when he rotated out of there to the next thing, someone came back and said, hey, he has become a Christian. And I just thought, nah. I've got to see. I've got to see it to believe it. The same way, like if someone tells you something that's just astonishing, your kids come to you and they say, hey, look, the neighbors have a giraffe in their backyard. You're going to think, nah. I mean,
No, right.
Kids, but you're going to think, you're going to go see this, all right? Because you're going to think, I have to see this. And right. It was like this when I heard about this coworker of mine who'd been in our unit, and it was real. I mean, it was real that he had changed his demeanor and his outlook on life completely changed. And I thought, wow, I mean, here's a place where I'm catching on that they have solid biblical teaching and people are really changing their lives through the power of the gospel. It's not from our human effort, through the Holy Spirit and power of the gospel, people really changing their lives and becoming healed from the kinds of things that have been in their lives and becoming more complete and becoming more giving and more engaging. And it was amazing to see that. And that's when I likewise looked into the same, ministry path and ministry movement to say, I need to find out more about this.
No, absolutely. And I appreciate you sharing that. And it kind of just made me think about how, the Bible does teach us to, transform ourselves by the renewing of our mind and, how we see the world, right? How we communicate with the world, how we, have to trust to be kind of cleansed and changed, kind of from the inside out. And it's a constant thing. And I really appreciate you sharing, about your journey, because it just reminds me a bit of my journey. I'm not going to really get into it, but it's definitely evolved. Let's just say that, over a long period of time. And I'm very grateful that even from when I was little, I grew up Catholic. So I've always grew up with a belief in God and a higher power. And that kind of just has evolved and changed, throughout the years, for sure. And so, I believe you met your wife, Allene, in the military,
That's
in the
right,
Army,
yeah.
right? Okay, right. And how long have you all been married?
Ooh, I need to look it up. We've been married.
You don't have to tell me the date because I
Yeah.
know I always get it wrong.
We were married on August 27th, 1994. We were married at Fort Bragg,
Okay.
North Carolina. In the comical thing of life, I tell people a lot because we were both in the same military unit for a stretch of time. So I like to tell people I married my commanding officer because she was in that period of time for a time.
Yep. Yeah, she's not going to like this, but I married my commanding officer too.
Okay.
So there you have it. No, that is fantastic. And I know you guys have, wonderful, fantastic kids. And so over the years, as, giving your life to God and everything, what are some lessons that you've learned from then to the present in terms of marriage and fatherhood, combined with your military experience?
Thanks. Amen. Certainly the big one, and this is the theme here, is how much I still needed to learn. All right. Even with the mindset that, like, for both Allene and I, we both were kind of far along in our military careers at that point. We'd been in that kind of 10-year range that we'd already been on military duty. We'd been here, there, and everywhere. We'd been in different parts of the world. So here we were thinking that we had enough knowledge and maturity and stuff like that for everything to go really well upon getting married. But the shock of the reality, everything looks different from the outside. Okay. Until you're doing it. All right. And what I certainly had to learn about humility, grace, leadership, and all those different things in a real relationship. I had a whole lot to learn. I'm grateful that there were people there that helped us tremendously. We had great friends who they saw and they gave full credit to the things that we did have in terms of our attributes and all that other stuff and integrity and so forth. Right. But the things that we needed to grow and change in, even though we were, beyond age 30 at that point, it was like, you need to grow, you need to change. And people that had the love for us and love for God, that they told us that in an appropriate, godly way, not in a badgering, control your life kind of way, but they said, this is why you're having these unhealthy things. You're looking at this wrong. You've got to change the way you look at it, the way you look at God, the way you look at yourself, the way you look at your marriage, and even parenting likewise, all those ways.
No, that's great. And I think it's always good to be able to, to get some input, with regards to that. And so, you all have been, serving and giving for decades, literally. And so, kind of along with the, kind of the theme that we're looking at today, and along with your, your time of serving really up until now to today, what does it mean to you with regards to giving of your time, your talent, and your treasure?
Thanks. Some lessons that we had from some relationships that we were in. One of the things that sticks with me a lot, we were in one place where we were expecting to basically have like a 2-year time of duty in that place before we would rotate out. And we built a relationship with another family there, and we were having a great time in our small group kind of thing and the relationship with them. And when it was at about the 1-year point where I knew, the time would be valuable and I wanted to use the time well, I asked the guy, how do you feel about how our relationship is? And he said, there's a lot that's really good, but I really feel that we're just not close. And I was floored by that, because we had gone to every length to be connected with them, to offer our time to them, to be, to take an interest in how they were in their family life with their teenage son and these other kinds of things. But ultimately what I had to realize, and what Allene and I had to realize, is we were sincerely trying to love people. The missing thing was we weren't loving them in a way that was meaningful to them. We were loving them in a way that was meaningful to us. And so, giving of your time to someone can't just be where you measure it on the clock, but like, what's going to be meaningful for that person? Giving of our talent in the same way. What's going to be meaningful for that person? Certain things are objective, where it's like, yeah, if you do a service project of some kind, that definitely has a tangible, it's undisputable that what you did is what you did, whether it's helping in one of the homeless communities or something like that. But at the same time, it's like, okay, how do they feel about this? I appreciate so much the book and concept of the 5 love languages that can help someone understand their own mindset, because it's easy to fall into the mindset of giving in our time and talent in ways that are meaningful to us, to ourselves, as compared to what's meaningful to this other person, even in the style of it. One of the guys that I have a real close, one of our close friends, one of the guys, great guy. I came to learn that for him, the type of communication was sending him a text message that was not a meaningful thing to him. I needed to call him on the phone. And I was like, oh, okay, now I know that. I mean, now I can adapt to that and adjust to that. Likewise, when it comes to things with our children, how do they feel? One of the lessons and series that we have that we recommend for people is a parenting class called Good Enough Parenting, of which one of the main things it looks after is, as the scripture says in the book of Paul's letter to the Ephesians, fathers, do not exasperate your children. Well, there's a lot of exasperation, especially when the parents may be trying. But if that's not meaningful to that child, exasperation, and the definition that's in that book and program is their emotional needs are not being met. And it doesn't mean you did that on purpose, but either way, if the outcome was, if it didn't meet their emotional needs, then fathers, don't do that, okay? Back up. You got to relearn, rethink, what is their emotional need? Because the scriptures don't say, fathers, make sure your children get at least a 3.3 GPA in school. Doesn't say that anywhere. It doesn't say, fathers, make sure your children, get at least one extracurricular activity and at least this much of that. It doesn't say that. It says, do not exasperate your children. But train them in the ways of the Lord. I'm misquoting it because I don't have it right in front of me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But that was a huge learning thing for me in terms of parenting. And then but that also works in the workplace. I mean, I found that one of my coworkers, a terrific, hardworking, really talented guy, I learned that the most important thing to him, what I perceived as it grew was I was frustrating him in the ways that I was doing things, where I'm trying to help, I'm trying to offer these ideas. And I realized, okay, it's not meaningful to him. He needs the things that's going to be meaningful to him that shows that I'm on board with his ideas is much more among the 5 love languages, the part about, words of respect and measures of respect that show that I'm listening to him. I really need to put the effort into it to show that I'm listening to him, because that was the thing that helped him to feel. Once he felt resolved with that, then he was fine with it. And then we had more leeway to grow and be effective and productive. Now, time, talent, and treasure, of course, these are the top things in terms of giving and serving. Some of them, really, the only one that you can say is the same for everyone is time. There's the 24 hours, but even that is not necessarily the same, because, again, what is a person's temperament? A morning person and a nighttime person are going to approach their day differently. And so will they be effective if they're trying to do things together? They're going to need to learn. And one big thing I learned in just our marriage dynamics for me and Allene, there's many ways where I am a morning person. I do my clearest thinking. I do my best work. I have my best attitude in the morning. Allene is more of a nighttime person. She's got high energy. She's got all her wits about her and stuff like that. And my natural thing would be Of course, my natural sinful thing would be I want to do this my way because it's what works for me. And I want to
Mhm.
work around her method when I have to. What I had to learn in the spiritual and relational thing is no, no, no. God gave me this relationship for a reason, and I need to value the things that are different about her when they're just style type things, you know. And the other thing that can be different with people in time, from when your children are small, you do get more time when your kids become old enough to do things for themselves. You do get more time. Or if someone is in a night school thing 3 nights a week and then they're done, then you suddenly do get more time and you have more time. So I mean, the 24 hours is the same in a way, but in a way it's not the same for everybody. And then on the scale of what people may have in resources when it comes to giving, if we're talking about financial giving, everybody's in a different place on that scale. But we see in the scriptures over and over, God honors the heart of that, regardless of where you are. If
Right.
someone's on the low end of that part of the scale, God admires, he does call everyone to have the heart to give from what they do have. And then he commends it, and he commends the person who's got the widow with the 2 coins. He commends her the same way, that Paul commends the Roman guy who built the synagogue for the people out there, regardless of whether they were at whichever end of the scale they're at, God looks at the heart. And he does call everyone to give from what they do have. And then that's how you join with the nature of God. God is a giver. We are made in his image. And if someone really struggles with that based on where they are, then there's a challenge in saying, okay, recognizing it's in God's nature and you're made in God's image to be giving, and to be lacking in that means missing something. And there's going to be things that are incomplete in your personal life and things that are probably not going to go well if you take a hard and fast attitude of not giving anything.
No, I agree with you 100%. And I think you've already really answered the next thing that I was going to ask about, is there some type of a ranking in your mind? But really, you really made that clear that God looks at the heart behind it. With regards to, okay, is there one that's gives more of a return in a sense, giving your time, your talent, or your treasure. But I really think it's definitely so much about what you shared in terms of, okay, well, how does God look at it at the end of the day, right? Because what we're giving is what we've been given in the first place, so it's not something that we just manufacture, ourselves. And one of the things that you shared about was about the relationship, kind of going back a few minutes, and how you were giving, but the person didn't feel close to you. And it just reminds me of when I was in grad school at American University, and we had a campus ministry there. And I learned a very hard lesson there with regards to how I perceived my relationships and my friendships there versus what they really were. And I kind of had to find that out the hard way. And it was very hurtful, but it was also very good at the same time, because I thought that I was close to multiple people there. I spent time with them. We ate lunch. We hung out on the quad. We did a lot of different stuff, but there were a few people, there were several really, who just didn't feel like the relationship had any depth. Right. There wasn't a lot of substance. They didn't know me well, and I really didn't take the time to know them well. So I had to process that, honestly. I think being, in my early 20s, I didn't really have a lot of experience of people telling me that type of thing, but I had to process it. And, years later, I still remember that, and I cherish that, Tom, because it has carried me throughout life to be able to say, okay, what am I doing or not doing that's connecting with this person, right? And I think from a business perspective, one of the things that I've learned, and I continue to learn, is to ask. Sometimes we just have to simply ask, even in our friendships. Hey, would you prefer to do this, or would you prefer to do that? What's the best way to communicate with you? What's the best way that we talk? By text, as you said, right? Or for us to have a phone conversation? Or do you want to go to Starbucks? You want to go to Panera and sit down in person? And people will tell you, right? And because I don't really think it's fair for us to assume someone's love language necessarily, right? Because we can assume wrong, and then we're going down that path. But I'm definitely of the school of thought just to kind of come out and ask in in the best way possible, as far as that's concerned. And so let me just ask you, with regards to like the time, the talent, and the treasure, right? There are a lot of different churches and organizations where they're asking, it seems like it's skewed more for them asking more of the treasure, right? Because they want to build up the coffers and build up the security. And so that's really more of where the focus is. They do ask people about time with regards to volunteering specifically, right? In certain ministries, to be able to give, but I guess that's also kind of with talent. When you look at a church, being a church elder, right? And being able to, I guess the term is really running the organization well. How do you balance that? If you have 200, 300, 400 people, or even smaller or larger, how do you balance that, right? With regards to the congregants?
Well, that's a terrific question. It is a challenge, okay? Because again, and especially for me, it's a challenge because again, my temperament is that I will gravitate towards things that are structure. I'll gravitate towards what's the process, what's the policy, what's the organizational side of this. Okay. And in my time of serving in our church here, in my time of being on the board and other things like that, where all of my attention was going to was towards much more the functional things, to where that's what I'd be thinking about every day is where are we on the functional thing when it comes to processes, arrangements and agreements and the facility condition and the budget capability to support these different things. And that got way out of balance for me. Now, other people helped me to get back into balance to where I would put more of my time and energy towards the relational things. And this may happen with any given person. And it can happen in a ministry as a whole. So we definitely strive to have real, genuine dialogue where we're aware of how that's going with us on our own personal level, so that when we're doing a function, whether it's trying to manage the resources or the programs or the facilities or the whatever, that we don't lose the heart of what we are doing and what the purpose is, and that we're doing things based on faith in, certainly trust in God and not in ourselves. Because if it's only for myself, I'll be much more limited. I'll be much more limited and more cautious, I guess I would say, and not walking in faith like God calls us to do. So I'm grateful that we have a balance of people. The different people in the leadership roles that we have here in our church that we're in Potomac Valley, where some people are the dynamic, visionary, lively, adventurous, go for it kind, and some are the can we count the number of seats in the bus before we try and pile 100 people into that bus? We strive to have a balance between those things. We want to get somewhere great,
right, and
go for it full speed ahead, and yet we want to be careful not to think we're going to get 100 people onto a single bus or something like that. And then in terms of encouraging the average members here and there, I don't know of any other way except to offer the I don't know any other way except to offer the personal experience of how it's worked out for us. God has never let us down when we've been giving, when we've given generously. And that was one of the turning points for me of like, do I trust God? Proverbs 3:5, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him and he will direct your paths. Honor the Lord with your wealth. And it goes on to say that, and it carries many of the promises. The Bible is a book full of promises, and God is trying to do great things for all of us. But I still had that turning point when I first thought, and nobody made me do it. Nobody sat me down and said, show me your show me your accounts and show me your budget, and this is what we're going to expect you to give. Nobody did anything like that. I looked at my heart and I thought, I am a structure guy. I want to see the answer. I want to know the answer. For me to grow, will I really trust God with this? Will I trust God and give at a level that is like what I see from the examples in the scriptures, the people that trusted God? And I thought, I don't know what's going to happen. But you know what? That's the meaning of trust. So I made that for my resolution for myself, and Allene shares that, and many other people do. I know you do. I mean, many people do. I do not know. I cannot control what's going to happen. But God will control it. God will take care of it. Now, as you know also, we do have the rigor so that for people that have any concerns about what happens, certainly in our church ministry, we have so many control measures. You have seen them. There is no way, there is essentially no way that someone can do something and divert the funds in some way. We have triple checking of everything in that way. But on the personal side, I wouldn't require anyone to account for that for me. I know that for me in my heart and my growth, I need to trust God that way, in a way that up to that point in my life, and even still, I have the temptation that I want to control it. And so that's the thing that I continually try to grow in and have the right heart to give in those ways.
No, and I appreciate that, and I think that there are, I think it's important for us to try to reach people where they are, right? Meaning, I think they're trying to look objectively. I guess it's kind of hard to do, but I think there are those who say, you know what, I'm going to absolutely trust God, and they're going to give what they can. And I think there's and there's actually just a fact that there's also a large part of people who maybe have a different perspective. Meaning, when we've had meetings to show, okay, well, what percentage of the people who are on the rolls give, right? And you see the small percentage, well, that's a problem, because there's a larger percentage of people who have a large household income, a decent household income, but decide not to give for whatever reason. And so I'm not going to be judgmental, but I do feel that, I guess we have to all examine our heart, right? This the way that you kind of talked about that. And, I think from conversations I've had, or even again, looking at myself, right, and things that I've had to learn, are we kind of tipping the scales, and do we sometimes justify, right? It's like, oh, you know what? I gave 30 hours for the church this week, almost the equivalent of a full-time job. I'm not going to give any money this week, or I do this and I do that. And it's like, well, I think at the end of the day, how does God look at it? And so what would you say, because I think there's just one more question really before we end off, but what would you say with regards to that? God, when I look at Potomac Valley, or I look at other places, it's really the 2 fish and the 5 loaves, right? I really see and believe how God has taken what has been given to us and he has multiplied it. Right. And I commend the faith of people who have been able to give him. But I don't think it's just not monetarily, though. Right. I know for a fact that God can take whatever. If there's Jesus says, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, right, then you can move this mountain. And the thing is, so you can take something small and multiply it and give it exponents to make it grow. What would you say with regards to being an elder at Potomac Valley? What are the things that, from your perspective, what can we change and grow in so that we take that mustard seed, whether it's a mustard seed of our time, of our talent and our treasure, to give it to God and have him grow it for us?
It's challenging because, again, each person needs to do things from their own conviction. And, prior to this, in earlier years, I talked about having some bad experiences. I was in some groups where there was a high level of someone else trying to run your life, with a spiritual veneer on it, but it was a control thing. And I'm determined not to perpetuate that. One of the other things that I do, I don't know the answer to it, we have many people that give of all their different resources, time, talent, and treasure. Many of them do it in ways that a lot of our people in our church fellowship aren't even aware that it's happening. Um, um, Things like taking care of the facilities. We have people who joyfully are taking care of the facilities and things like that. There's a group of about 3 or 4 of the guys in our Fredericksburg area that they cut the grass there regularly, like all the time. And that's a large parcel of land. I mean, the land down there is like a 5-acre plot, and those guys cut that grass. And even with the ride-on thing, that's going to take a while, but they do that. And now I know who they are. They're not asking for visibility. Sometimes they don't even turn in the receipts for the fuel. Now, I know there's a certain level of joy in riding a ride-on loader. So so they're enjoying part of it to do that. Or some trees fell and they got the chainsaws out there. And usually there's a joy in using the chainsaw. You don't have to necessarily twist somebody's arm to get them out there to do that. They'll be like, yeah, I got my chainsaw, let me at it, In some ways, I would like to perpetuate making people more aware that we have people giving in those ways, but the people are not asking for visibility. They're doing it out of their hearts to serve and the joy of doing it, whether it's the cleanup crew. There's a couple who regularly cleans up the building in there. There's one of our men in the Dumfries part of the map that he's over there constantly looking at this, looking at that, about things to improve, being on the lookout, being mindful of the property, not asking for exposure and visibility. I would like to offer them up as positive examples. They are not asking for the spotlight. We do have that from time to time. We do have people do get acknowledged. I think of if there were a way to do it to not embarrass anyone, I would want to make it a constant, ongoing thing to say these guys have been doing this constantly to look after it in different ways, and people giving in. There are also people giving the monetary financial side in some creative, innovative ways. We've had some people that have come forward with some monetary and monetized kind of gifts that are out of the ordinary, but unusual in a very positive, innovative, creative way that they found. Like people on their corporate side, if there was a matching program, we have had someone where they're giving essentially like a corporate stock kind of thing because the company has a matching program. That's not the normal way that a person gives on Sunday, but that's someone who is determined to give and finding a creative way to get more out of it. That person does not, and there's more than one person, but they don't want the spotlight. It's challenging because I would like to offer the positive examples. But the other thing is, I would again want to share that there's a feeling of there is a joy in giving, that if people are not giving in those kind of ways, there's a part that they're missing out on. And it's part of God's character too. And it's a part of the community's character. When the people built the tabernacle in the wilderness, people gave so much that Moses and the leaders had to say, okay, that's enough. I'm very sure there were people in the background that didn't offer it up. I'm quite sure there were people that walked out of Egypt and say, well, my master's family gave me this bracelet and this is my bracelet. Okay, you keep the bracelet, but this glorious thing just happened and you're not part of it. It got done because people who were willing got it done, but there's this glorious thing that is happening. You got your bracelet. I hope you enjoyed the bracelet, but that's what you got, and you missed out on this glorious thing that's going on.
No, and I appreciate you sharing that, and it just kind of reminds me in one of our sister congregations, I had volunteered to usher me and Brian, who are down here with us, and he and I were on the ushering team for about 1.5 years straight. And I loved every second of it. Every second of it. I loved it because it helped me to meet a lot of people that I would have never met because, we're all creatures of habit. and different people just sit where they sit, every single Sunday. And so having to serve in different areas, I got to meet so many people and to see things from a different perspective and to give of my time and to help the service to run in an orderly fashion, right? It was an absolute joy, for example, to be able to give in that way, right? In addition to other ways. So I really appreciate what you share. And I have to give a shout out to Jimmy and to Alex, right? Alexander. I'm not going to say their last names, but I've gone to the church building multiple times during the week, and they're there fixing something, picking something up, putting something somewhere, and I'm like, it's convicting. And I'm feeling like, here I am, way younger, and I need to be here picking something up, fixing something. And I'm really appreciative of these men and the time that they spend when no one's going to see what they're doing, right? They're not going to get highlighted or spotlighted. And I respect that highly, and I just appreciate people like that. I really do. And I really feel like, God blesses that immensely. So, as we end off, given your experience in the military, being married, children, being a servant, an elder in the Potomac Valley Church, what are either some words of wisdom or even admonishment that you'd have for those in the younger generation coming up today with regards to where we are in 2023 and what's going on in our society and the decisions, even social media, or whatever it is, and the decisions that people have to make for their own life
Wow, amen.
path?
That's a wide range of things because of the different type of
You can narrow it
challenges
down.
that are out there across everything: family, community,
Mhm.
work.
Yeah.
We live in this area where everyone is mindful of what happens in the government. Things do, but everything starts at the personal level. I think I would start at the starting point, which is the personal level. Okay. One of the great declarations about God's character in the book of Deuteronomy, in Deuteronomy 6:4, it says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength." I like to pause and really examine the fact where it says the Lord is one. We have so many things in our culture today that want to divide people up to where people have more than like people have the temptation or the forcing things to be more than one person, to be one person at home, one person at church, one person at work, one person at school, one person on the team that they're on, one person on social media, or maybe multiple different people on social media. God is one. One meaning of integrity is that you are an integrated person living an integrated life. And this is not my personal idea. There's a book on this called Integrity by Dr. Henry Cloud. And it means not being a fragmented person that is living a fragmented or disintegrated life. An integrated life is better. It is better. It's more peaceful. It's more satisfying. And it's not a trap. You can grow and change. You can do things differently, but you can do it in an integrated way where it's not in battle with different parts of your life against themselves, but this is the walk that you're going to walk. One thing that I'm grateful for and that I try to really hold on to, I walk with freedom and with peace without having to look over my shoulder to see if someone's going to see what I'm doing or where I'm going or what I'm doing on the computer, because I'm not trying to be more than one person. Anyone can go ahead and look at what I'm looking at the computer, because you know what? That is what I'm looking at. Anyone can look at my phone or look at my whatever and the computer, or they could follow me around, and there isn't anything that would cause embarrassment to my wife or my children or my boss or the church family. Yeah. I'm only living one life. I don't have the energy to try and live all these duplicate multiple lives. I told you I don't have the social media accounts anyway. I wouldn't be able to keep it up. But I do think there's something in that passage from Deuteronomy that says the Lord is one. If people are trying to be more than one, it's not going to work out well. I mean, they got a conflict right there. And yet the culture wants you to honor the culture of whatever its focus might be. This happened in military life. I mean, the military can tend to reward people who are the workaholic go-getters because they're devoted all in to that. Well,
Mm-hmm.
the Army, I had one of the reckonings I had was when I realized the Army doesn't love me, in that kind of way. I can give and give and give, and the Army's going to make the decisions that are best for the Army, not for Tom. And I had to reconcile with that, which I realized, okay, I see that. I'll still do the things that are the best for my organization and the soldiers and all that, but I won't be trying to find the validation there from the Army, because the Army is a great, big, impersonal organization. And many other things can work the same way, whether it's your college identity or your workplace or whatever. I mean, Brandon, there are people that they are almost on duty 24 hours if they're in the real estate business. And people that they balance that well. And you see people, I'm sure, that they don't balance it well. It has taken a cost in their overall life if they're given their whole life 24/7 to that. People, but they got to resolve that, if that's how they're going to live their lives,
No, I agree with you 100%. And I think that's a great life lesson, just to have integrity, right? And even looking at, when I think about kind of the definition of that word, right? It's amazing. I might have to add that to the stack of books I haven't read yet. I do have a couple of Henry Cloud books, but I'll definitely probably go on Amazon and get that at some point. But this has been amazing. I really, from the heart, I appreciate this conversation that we've had, and I appreciate you sharing your life and your experiences and your perspective. Maybe at some point, I would love to have a part 2 of this to kind of talk about some different topics. And I know that people who listen to this podcast are going to get a lot out of it because I think it not just kind of speaks to kind of some of the topical and life items, but it really speaks to the heart at the end of the day. And so thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing
Brandon,
everything with us tonight.
I'm really grateful you invited me here. I do appreciate everything you're doing on the podcast and all the other things you're doing. Thanks.
No, absolutely. It's definitely been my pleasure. So, all right, people, it's been an amazing conversation we've had with Mr. Tom Martin, elder at the Potomac Valley Church. Please share this with as many people as possible. It's an in-depth and honest and definitely life-changing conversation. Love you all. Peace. Take care, and God bless.